Well, good afternoon, everybody. May I first of all take this opportunity to thank each and everyone who has commented on all the videos that I've done. I'm up to now over 1,000 subscribers, which is absolutely amazing. I never thought for one moment I'd ever even get to 20 or 30 subscribers. So, you know, because it was never my intention to start doing YouTube videos. It was due to a certain character from Southern California that persuaded me to keep going. So I do get lots of comments, some from the other side of the fence, pretty deluded at times. I do apologise that I don't always get the opportunity to answer everybody's comments, and I don't even get sometimes the chance to put a like on everybody's comments, but please rest assured, I think I've read everybody's comments, everybody that's ever posted a comment on a video. But as I say, I do apologise for some of the times not having the opportunity to, as I say, click on the like button. Some of the comments I get from the guilties, I've had one or two that seem to think that it's important to comment either on my hairstyle. I've had one comment on my teeth, believe it or not, on my accent, my build. You know, if you think that's important, then you are a very, very sad person. Clearly, the problem is that from their point of view, they have zero to offer the debate, the discussion. Some of them, it's interesting, isn't it, how they accuse us of only ever having watched a documentary. I can't help thinking that for a lot of these guilties, they've never even watched the documentary. They're like Scooter and Herman, who never even watched Making a Murderer. They criticised it anyway, just because that was the thing to do. And you can tell by the fact that some of the guilties are so uninformed of the facts of the case that they clearly have not watched Making a Murderer. They're quite happy to go along with the nonsense that the state have tried to perpetuate. This afternoon, I actually got a comment on a collection of videos, short videos, where all I did was merely stand in front of the TV and record little clips of the confession killer, particularly focusing on the attempts basically to falsely convict, to intimidate District Attorney Vic Feazell. So earlier today, I actually got a comment from none other than Vic Feazell. I'll read what he put. I will also share a link below to his podcasts where he talks in depth about the Henry Lucas case, and particularly his own experiences. It's incredible. He was a district attorney, a popular district attorney, but because he decided that he wanted to be an ethical district attorney, that caused huge problems for other people. Anyway, Vic Feazell wrote, it says here, an hour ago, I think it was slightly more than an hour ago, "Thanks for posting these, Paul. Netflix did a good job, but they left out so much. including the fact that the government changed the tax code and made it retroactive just to get me. We're referring, of course, to the fact that he successfully sued, and he was awarded the biggest civil suit in American history against the media, against the news corporation. I might have slightly the wrong terms, but that was, you can see that in the Confession Killer. That they, as I say, the government changed the tax code and made it retroactive just to get me. They took away almost everything I had. They tried to arrest me one more time after my not guilty verdict. Netflix has proof that the assistant US attorney committed perjury before the grand jury that indicted me. And there was a direct link between Jim Adams. Remember that Colonel Jim Adams? What an appalling person he was. Jim Adams and Channel 8. Now, this is what Vic Feazell wrote. There could be a second series just on, quote, the deep state versus Vic Feazell. I hope there is, but I don't know if he's just suggesting that, you know, as I said, there were so many stories within the story of the Confession Killer. But obviously the intimidation, persecution of Vic Feazell was undoubtedly the main thing that I took away from it. The appalling behaviour of Jim Boutwell, this superb, legendary Texas Ranger who had no use whatsoever for the truth. So, as I say, he wrote, there could be a second season just on the deep state versus Vic Feazell. Let's hope that Netflix decide to do that. But I think Vic is just saying that there could have easily been a whole lot of videos just about his circumstances. And of course, he goes on to say that I have a podcast if you want to hear me talk about it. It's called the Vic Feazell Show Podcast. Thanks, Vic Feazell. I've already written to Vic, and I'm hoping that we can at some point in the not too distant future get together and we can do a live chat. That would be absolutely awesome. Let's see if I can get this to come down. No, I seem to be having difficulty trying to get... Oh, there we go. There we go. So yeah, I simply replied, you can check it out for yourself, but I simply replied that I have listened to quite a few of the podcasts which I have. They are excellent. They go into great detail. Hopefully you'll be able to join me for a live chat about your incredible career. So yes, earlier today, as I say, I got that message from Vic Feazell. Sadly, Vic Feazell is one of the exceptions. Unfortunately, Ken Kratz is not the exception. He is the norm. This is what a lot of people in the justice system, the so-called justice system, are all about. The corruption, the intimidation. So really, I suppose one could argue, is Ken Kratz the most evil person on the planet? He's probably just simply one of them. He's probably not the most evil. He's amongst quite a few. Now, because of his notoriety, of course, a lot of guilters would like to suggest that Stephen Avery be perceived as being like Ken Kratz. We saw, didn't we, when we looked at the sexting career of Ken Kratz, how hard Kratz battled to avoid any publicity as a result of his sexting being uncovered. He was absolutely desperate, threatening and trying to intimidate the people at the DOJ. We particularly remember, of course, him talking about the fact that with Steve and Brendan's cases being at the appeal stages, they would need to get somebody else to handle them, because there was no way he was going to be doing it anymore, because he had given his unconditional support to J.B. Van Hollen and the Department of Justice, and he really did try to, well, he he tried every trick in the book. He used the full toolbox in trying to avoid the publicity. As I say, we saw how much he battled against it. But then what we saw was how the public, the press, even the government, they turned on him very, very quickly, very, very rapidly. For me, the disgracing of Ken Kratz gave us an amazing insight into what it would have been like for MTSO back in 2003 and 2004. Peg Lautenschlager's report completely brushed things under the carpet. So what did Steve, as in Glyn, Avery and Walt Kelly do? They took it further. They got as far as the final 2 depositions. Manitrock realised they would have to do something about it. And as far as I'm concerned, they did the most evil thing you possibly can do. They sacrificed an innocent photographer in order to avoid the tables being turned on them so badly. Because, as I say, public opinion, when it turns, it's quite a thing to behold. I'm sure a lot of us have noticed that. You know, the way that the public turned on Stephen Avery and Brendan as a result of that press conference. I think another thing that would have happened had the civil suit carried on. The public would, some of the citizens that have been badly treated would have come forward. I think the floodgates would have been opened. Citizens in Manitrock would have come forward to express their grievances. I can't help thinking that even the cover-up of the Ricky Hochstetler case would have been exposed, along with, many others. We have, for example, the situation where Conrad Pete Bates explains to us that Deborah Kakich fell out with Manitrock County Sheriff's Department. It's all detailed in John Farrak's book. She went to an accident where somebody had been knocked over. When some other sheriff's officers arrived at the scene, they accidentally ran over the victim that was lying on the floor. And they put pressure on her to write up a report which said that he was already dead before he got run over. And she pointed out, no, if when I do my autopsy, if that's not the case, then that's not going to be in, then I'm just going to go by what happened. I'm not prepared to spare the distraught officers that had ran over the victim if that was not the case. If that was what killed him, that's what was going to go in his report. In her report, I must admit, we've yet to see what the outcome of that case was. I think it is detailed in the book, but I do not recall what the eventual outcome of that case was. We know, of course, that as far as Ricky Hochstetler was concerned, there has been no closure on that case. They don't want closure on that case. Lincoln Colburn simply wanted the Hochstetlers to just accept that it could have been anybody that randomly knocked him over, and end of story. And we see some of the horrendous cover-ups going on in that case. So basically, is it any wonder that the state are so concerned following the release of Making a Murderer? Is it any wonder that they've got, the judge in their pocket, Angela Sukovich, doing what she is doing or has done thus far in this case, which is to just bat away everything and to not give an inch to Kathleen Zellner and her motions, even though the Court of Appeals can see how ludicrous the case against Stephen is. Another thing is it any wonder that Mark Wiegert, of all people, be suggesting reading Ken Kratz's book? For me, as I say, that just beggars belief. He's a disgraced former district attorney, an appalling person. As I say, the most evil person in the world? Not the most evil, but amongst them, yes. Isn't it strange that Mark Wiegert should suggest reading this guy's book? As if, when it comes to ethics, he has none. But when it came to the Teresa Holbach investigation, oh yes, that was absolutely fine, Isn't it interesting as well how even the majority of guilters are equally appalled by Ken Kratz, and yet they're quite happy, again, to support his unethical assertions that Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey are guilty. We get this all the time, that they're exactly where they belong. They were put there by, they had their trial, they were put there by a jury. I know for a fact that we've got a lot more to hear about what happened at that trial. That's all I'm going to say on that matter. There is absolutely no doubt that when Laura and Moira received that information from the juror themselves, that votes were traded, that is something that, from what I can gather, talking with legal experts, it's not something that needs to come forward at this moment in time. It's something that can be brought up later on. The process obviously is to prove, as Kathleen Zellner has done so thus far, to prove that all the evidence against Steve is bogus, which we know, we can see that. That needs to go to an evidentiary hearing whereby that can again be argued about and proven to be the case. Then there needs to be the process, once you've got rid of all this planted evidence and fabrication, you then need to get Stephen out. Then will be the time, I suspect, to say, now let's look at the reason why Stephen Avery and Brendan Dassey were wrongfully convicted. That's the time, I believe, when we will really start to get into the despicable behaviour. A bit like Vic Feazell, he is still trying to expose to the world exactly what was going on in, he was McClellan County in Texas, the likes of, your Jim Bagwells, your Jim Adams, and the district attorney, another district attorney that worked with Bagwell, I think his, Travis did mention his name. You get so many of these names, you can't always remember them. Anyway, not Troy. I've kept you nearly 20 minutes. As I say, once again, I thank everybody for your comments. I even sometimes thank the guilters for their comments, albeit for the fact that I can then send them to all the people I know, and we can have a good laugh at some of the stuff that they come out with. You never know. Maybe if one or two of them were to actually look and watch Making a Murderer and digest what's being said there, it maybe it wouldn't take too much to get them to realise that as much as they are appalled at the fact that Teresa Halbach lost her life, when they begin to realise the machinations behind that they'll begin to realise something needs to be done. Anyway, we'll catch you all again soon, and bye for now.